So for today, we'll be discussing estimation to population. Okay? How do you estimate to population? Okay? So number 1, letter A, confidence interval estimator for difference of mean known the standard deviation of the population. So this is the first concept under the estimation to population. So letter A, confidence interval estimator for difference of means. And then the standard deviation is known, meaning it's given. Okay? So what do you mean by that one? If independent samples are chosen from two normal populations with means u sub 1 and mu sub 2, and the variances sigma sub 1, sigma squared sub 1, and then the sigma sub 2 squared respectively, okay, the confidence interval of their differences or of their difference is given by mean, sample mean sub 1 minus sample mean sub 2 minus the margin of error. Okay, so this is how we determine the confidence interval of the two population. Okay, mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 is greater than sample mean minus the second sample mean minus the margin of error, but less than sample mean sub 1 minus the sample mean sub 2 plus the margin of error. Okay, so what have you noticed? In discussing the estimation of two population, if you have noticed, there are two given populations. So if there are two given population, so more or less, there are two sample mean. Okay? Kung meron kang dalawang two population, of course, you also have two sample mean. Okay? May dalawang population eh. So each population, you need to get the sample. Okay? So kung dalawa yun, definitely, you do have two sample mean. Okay? So to solve for E, so same thing. Okay? Z alpha over 2 multiplied by the square root. Okay? Variance 1, okay, the first variance divided by the number of sample size, okay, the first sample size plus the second variance divided by the second sample size. Okay, take note, the population and sample sizes are not necessarily of the same size. Okay, so the populations and the sample sizes are not necessarily of the same size. So this is the first condition under the estimation of two population. Confidence interval estimator for the difference of means if the standard deviation is given or known. Okay? Next, letter B condition. Okay? Letter B condition. Confidence interval estimator for difference of means if the standard deviation is unknown. So this is the second condition. Confidence interval estimator for difference of means if the standard deviation is unknown. Okay, so what do you mean by that one? If independent samples are chosen from two populations with the means mu sub 1 and mu sub 2, and then the variances of that sample, okay, the variance of the given sample 1 and the variance of the given sample 2 respectively, the confidence interval of their difference is given by, okay, mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 is greater than mean sub 1 minus mean sub 2 minus the margin of error, but less than sample mean sub 1 minus sample mean sub 2 plus the margin of error. Okay, so in here, okay, in letter B condition, confidence interval estimator for difference of means unknown, okay, standard deviation, meaning the standard deviation is not given. Okay, if the independent samples are chosen from the two populations with means mu sub 1 and mu sub 2, and then the variances respectively, the confidence interval of their difference is given by this one. Okay, so how do we determine their confidence interval? Okay, so to determine the confidence interval of condition letter B, mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 is greater than sample mean sub 1 minus sample mean sub 2 minus E. Ano ba yung E? That's the margin of error. Okay? But less than sample mean sub 1 minus sample mean sub 2 plus the margin of error. Means, how do we solve for the margin of error? So to solve for the margin of error, so same thing. Okay? Nag-iiba lang sa formula, but the process, it's still the same on how do we solve for the margin of error in estimation of one population. Okay? Same process lang, but the only difference is the formula. So to solve for the margin of error, Z alpha over 2, okay, Get your table. Still there. This one. Pa rin naman yun. Okay. This table. So E is equal to Z alpha over 2 multiplied by the square root. The variances, okay, the variance of the sample at chosen sample, okay, divided by the first sample size plus the second variance of the given sample divided by the sample size of the given sample. Okay, so meaning E is equal to Z alpha over 2 multiplied by the square root S squared sub 1 over N sub 1 plus S squared sub 2 over N sub 2. Provided that the sample size are sufficiently large. And take note, and take from non-normal population. Okay, so hindi siya galing sa normal population. So meaning, it's not normally distributed. Okay, provided that the sample sizes are sufficiently large. So meaning, it should be higher than 30. Okay, so how do we solve that? Let's say for example, Karen wants to know which method, okay, Karen wants to know which method of grouping her students resulted to better performance of the students. Okay, Karen wants to know which method of grouping her students resulted to better performance of the students. She sampled 2 sections, okay, selecting 35 groups each. Okay, so it should be sufficiently large. So the given must be greater than 30. Okay, the sample with grouping method A gave an average grade of 88.53. So si group A daw with a mean average of 88.53, while section B gave an average of 87.09. The variances of the samples are 3.05 and 2.74 respectively. Okay? At 90% confidence, can it be said that grouping method A produces better grades compared to grouping method B? Anyone? When we say 90% confidence, meaning you are 90% confident that grouping method A produces better grades than grouping method B. Do you think A produces better grades than group B? Can anyone answer it before we proceed? What do you think? Based on the result that we have, are you 90% confident that A produces better grades than B? Any insights? What do you think? Who produced better? Is it group A or group B? Is it group A or group B? Anyone? What is your insight about it? Anyone, my dear people? What do you think? Don't worry, there's no wrong answer. Based on the numbers or data that we have, are you 90% confident that Group A produce better grades compared to Group B based on the data that we have? What do you think? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Why? Why do you say so, my dear? Why do you think so?
Grouping method A has a higher average grade compared to grouping method B.
Okay, very good. Okay, based on the data that we have, okay, obviously, Group A has an average of 88.53, while Group B, it's only 87.09. Okay, so Group A obviously has the highest average, which is 88.53, okay, in terms of performance. Okay, so more or less we can conclude that in 90% confidence, you are 90% confident that Group A produces better grades than B, okay, with regards with their given data. Okay. So we have, we need to construct the 90% confidence level, refers to the Z-score. So remember in the given table that we have, so this is the table. So kindly, you have this copy, okay, send ako na ito yung mga formulas, so the table's there. So the 90%, which is the Z alpha over 2, that is the 90% is that would be 1.645. Means ano yung 1.645? 1.645, you are referring to the Z alpha over 2. Okay? Z alpha over 2. Now, to solve for the margin of error, yung E, okay, going back again. So going back, ayan, diba? E is equal to Z alpha over 2 multiplied by the square root of the first variance divided by the sample size plus the second variance divided by the second sample size. Okay? So that's how we solve for E. Okay, for the margin of error. So in this particular problem, so the mean of the first group is 88.53, and then the mean of the second group is 87.09, and then the variance of the first group is 3.05, and then the variance of the second group is 2.74. Now, to construct a 90% confidence level, so that will be Z alpha. First, you need to solve for the margin of error. E is equal to Z alpha multiplied by the square root first variance divided by the first sample size plus the second variance divided by the second sample size. Okay, so you do have 1.645. How do you get 1.645? So using the table that we have, again, using the table, ayan. So determine the 90%. So ano yung katapat ni 90% sa Z alpha over 2? So that would be 1.645. And then you just substitute. So your first variance is 3.05 divided by 35 because there are 35 students, okay, plus 2.74 divided by 35. So your margin of error is 0.67. Now, the question is, what is your interval? Okay, so what will be the interval? How do you get 1.44 plus or minus 6.67? How do you get that? So nakuha yung 1.44 plus or minus 0.67. How do you get that? So nakuha yung 1.44. How do you get 1.44? 1.44, you're referring to what? You're referring to what? What is 1.44? Plus or minus 0.67? What's that? What is 1.44? How do we determine the interval? So to determine the interval, again people, okay? So to determine the interval, remember, mean 1 minus mean 2, okay? Sample mean 1 minus the sample mean 2 minus E, okay? This one. So mu1 minus mu2 greater than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 minus E. And then the other one is less than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 plus E. Okay? In this particular, your margin of error is 0.67. So that is your margin of error. Now, how do we determine the interval? So to determine the interval, you just simply subtract the mean, the sample mean. So we have 88.53 minus 87.09, okay, minus 0.67, okay, ilang yun? So we have greater than mu1 minus mu2, okay, less than, so same thing, 88.53 minus 87.09 plus 0.67. Okay? So 88.53 minus 87.09. What is the answer? 88.53 minus 87.09. What will be the answer? Anybody? Ano yung sagot? 88.53 minus 87.09. What will be the answer? Can anyone give me the answer? 88.53 minus 87.09. What will be the answer? 88.53 minus 87.09. What will be the answer? Anyone? Ano sagot?
1.44.
Okay, 1.44 minus 0.67. So we have mu1 minus mu2 greater than 1.44 minus 0.87. And then the other one is less than 88.53 minus 87.09 still. 1.44 plus 0.67. Now, what will be your final answer? What will be the final answer? 1.44 minus 0.67 and then 1.44 plus 0.67. So what will be our final answer? Our final answer will be mu1 minus mu2 greater than what? Greater than what? Greater than what? 1.44 minus 0.67. 1.44 minus 0.67. What will be the answer?
0.77.
Okay, so 0.77 but less than 2.11. So this is your interval. So that is your interval. So what will be the interpretation of that one? Okay, with a 90% confidence, grouping method A produces a better grades than grouping method B. Okay, so with a 90% confidence, grouping method A produces better grades than grouping method B. Why? Because in the given data that we have, okay, the mean of group A has 88.53 compared to the mean of group B, which is 87.09. Okay? Two kinds of thread are being compared for strength. 50 pieces of each type of thread are tested under similar conditions. Okay? Under similar conditions. Brand A has an average tensile strength of 78.3 kilograms with a standard deviation of 5.6 kilograms. While brand B has an average tensile strength of 87.2 kilograms with a standard deviation of 6.3 kilograms. Construct a 90% confidence interval for the difference of population means. Okay? So we have brand A, 78.3, and then variance, 5.6 squared. Okay, 5.6 squared. Remember, this is condition letter B. Okay, your sample size must be sufficiently large, meaning higher than 30. So since the given is 50, so sufficiently large yun, so which is higher than 30. It means the given is a standard form. Even though it's the given standard form, you can get the variance. How do we get the variance? By getting the square. Okay, by getting the squared of your standard form. Although the given is in standard form, but also you take note, you can also get or determine the variance. How do we determine the variance? You need to square your standard deviation. Okay? So mean of brand A is 78.3, and then the mean of brand B is 87.2. Now, to determine the variance, just simply get the squared of the standard deviation. So the squared of the standard deviation, okay, 5.6 squared, and then the other one is 6.3 squared. Okay? So that is the variance. Okay? You need to get the square. You need to get the square of each standard deviation, okay, per brand to determine the variance. Okay? Now, construct the 90% confidence level. So same thing, how do we construct the 90% confidence level? First, you need to identify, or you need to determine the margin of error. Okay? So I need to determine the margin of error. So since the given is still 90%, so meaning your Z alpha, okay, 90% pa rin. So the Z alpha is 1.645, okay, 1.645. So what the margin of error is equal to 1.645 multiply, okay, yung given na variance. So that will be 5.6 squared divided by 50 plus 6.3 squared divided by 50. So your margin of error is 1.96. Now the question, what will be your interval? Okay? So what will be your interval? So the interval will be mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 greater than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 minus the margin of error, but less than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 plus the margin of error. Okay? So mu 1 minus mu 2 greater than, what is your sample mean 1 and sample mean 2? So it's already given. So we have 78.3 minus 87.2. So minus 87.2 minus 1.96. Okay. And then the other one is 78.3 minus 87.2. Okay. Plus 1.96. So the answer is mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 greater than negative 10.86 but less than negative 6.94. Okay? So negative 10.86 and then negative 6.94. So with a 90% confidence, the true mean difference between the two means is between negative 10.86 and negative 6.94. So that is your conclusion. Okay? With a 90% confidence, the true mean difference between the two means is between negative 10.86 and negative 6.94. So that will be your answer. Okay? Next, condition letter C. In condition letter C, confidence interval estimator for difference of means, okay, if the standard deviation is unknown. Okay? The standard deviation is unknown. Variances are unknown but assumed to be equal. Okay? Variances are unknown but assumed to be equal. So that would be letter C condition. Confidence interval estimator for the difference of means wherein the standard deviation is unknown, meaning it's not given. Okay? So for letter C condition, if independent samples are chosen from two normal populations with means mu sub 1 and mu sub 2, the confidence interval of their difference is given by, so same thing, okay? Mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 greater than sample mean sub 1 minus sample mean sub 2 minus the margin of error, okay, but less than sample mean sub 1 minus sample mean sub 2 plus the margin of error. Okay? So how do we solve for the margin of error? E is equal to T alpha over 2. Now, okay? Same thing with our previous discussion, yung one population. If the standard deviation is not given, okay, and then the sample size is less than 30, we will be using T distribution. Okay? T distribution. Hindi na si Z. Tapos na si Z. So we will proceed now to T distribution. Okay? If the sample size is less than 30, and then the standard deviation is not given, so we will be using this formula. So T distribution na tayo. Okay? T distribution. Okay? This one. Yung formula, I think you have this eh. Nabigay ko na yung mga table, so kindly go over with the table. Okay? We will be using the T distribution table. Ayan, this one. Okay. So this is the T distribution table. So to solve for the margin of error, T alpha over 2 multiplied by S squared P multiplied by 1 over N sub 1 plus 1 over N sub 2. Okay? And then since we're talking about T distribution, so we will be using degree of freedom, yung DF. Okay, kailangan natin yon to determine the confidence interval. So DF is equal to N sub 1 plus N sub 2 minus 2. Miss, why is it N sub 1 plus N sub 2? In our previous discussion, yung one population, since given lang yung isang population, kaya N minus 1 lang. Diba? Kasi isa lang yung population. So in here, we're talking about two populations. So your degree of freedom must be N sub 1 plus N sub 2 minus 2. Kasi dalawa na yung given. Okay? That's the difference. Okay? Only if variances sigma squared 1 and sigma squared 2 are unknown but assumed equal, and common variance is given by yan, S squared P is equal to N sub 1 minus 1 multiplied by the sample variance plus N sub 2 minus 1 multiplied by the second variance, okay, the second sample variance over N sub 1 plus N sub 2 minus 2. So take note of these formulas. Okay? You don't need to memorize because it's already there. Okay, dun sa binigay ko na PDF formulas. Everything is there. Okay? Just to analyze na what particular condition you will be using. Again, in condition letter C, confidence interval estimator for difference of means and known standard deviation. Meaning, if the sample size is less than 30, and then the standard deviation is not given, we will be using T distribution. So, hindi mo na si Z. Tabi mo na si Z. Okay? So, we will be using T distribution. That's why we need to use T alpha over 2. Okay? So, for example, yan. Okay? Example, a comparison of the cost of renting apartment in thousands of pesos in two different cities is given below. Okay? So, the sample size, 20, or 20, which is less than 30. Again, if it's less than 30, so we will be using T distribution. Okay? If the standard deviation is not given. Okay? So, gagamitin natin yung T distribution. Okay? So, in here, so the mean is 17.75, 18.75, and the standard deviation is 1.25 and 0.90. So, in this particular, so since given na yung table, okay, meron nang given na data, even though that the standard deviation is given, miss, given yung standard deviation eh. Yeah, given yung standard deviation in this particular example. Pero take note, what is your sample size? Miss, less than 30. O see, kapag less than 30, so we'll be using T distribution. If and only, kahit na given yung standard deviation. So in this particular example kasi, table na yung given na example. So nagkataon na table yung given, so nandyan na lahat. Yung mean, yung sample size, and then the standard deviation. Okay? And this you said that we only use T distribution if the sample size is less than 30 and the standard deviation is not given. Yes, of course. Okay? But since etong example na to, ang binigay sa atin is stable na, okay? And then they provided the standard deviation. Kapag nandiyan na yung standard deviation, good for you. Okay, you don't need to compute. And how do we know if we'll be using T distribution? So you better check the sample size. Ano ba yung sample size natin? What is the sample size? Less than 30, di ba? Which is 20. So kapag less than 30, so you need to use the T distribution. So wala muna si Z. T distribution muna tayo. Okay? Let's proceed down to letter A. Find a point estimate of the difference between true mean cost of renting an apartment in the cities. So find the point estimate. How do we solve that? How do we solve that? Anyone? Can anyone solve it? How do we solve that? How do we solve that? Find the point estimate. Ano ba yung best point estimate? You're referring to what? You're referring to the sample mean. So in letter A, find a point estimate of the difference between true mean cost of renting an apartment in the cities. How do we answer letter A? Anybody? Anybody? How do we answer letter A? Difference between the true mean cost of renting. Yung difference daw. So how do we answer letter A? Remember when we say point estimate, the best point estimate, you are referring to the sample mean. Now, how do we answer letter A? How do we answer letter A? Anybody? Can anyone tell me how to answer letter A? Find the point estimate of the difference. So meaning what? Difference. Mean 1 minus mean 2. So what will be the answer? Sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2. So what will be the answer? What will be the answer? What will be the answer, my dear? Ano sagot? What's your mean? What's the mean? Hello?
Negative 1.
Okay, negative 1. Okay, so the mean is negative 1. Next, letter B. Assume that the cost of renting an apartment in two cities are approximately normal with unknown but equal variances. Construct a 90% confidence interval for the difference between the true mean cost of renting an apartment in two cities. So we need to construct a 90% confidence interval. Okay? So 90% confidence. So 90% confidence. So since the given sample size is less than 30, so we will be using T alpha over 2. So T alpha over 2. So we will be using this one. Yung T alpha over 2. Okay? So how do we do that? How do we use T alpha over 2? How do we use it? Yung T alpha over 2. How do we use T alpha over 2? First, determine the what? Determine the degree of freedom. Paano ba kunin yung degree of freedom? Going back. N sub 1 plus N sub 2 minus 2. So N sub 1 plus N sub 2 minus 2. So your N sub 1 is 20 plus 20 minus 2. So what will be your degree of freedom? 38. Now, to determine the T alpha, to determine this, okay, yung T alpha, because we need to determine the T alpha before we proceed for margin of error. So kailangan muna identify si T alpha. Miss, how do we identify the T alpha? Of course, we need to determine the degree of freedom. Okay, degree of freedom. So to solve for the degree of freedom, N sub 1 plus N sub 2 minus 2. So the first sample size is 20. The second sample size is 20 minus 2. So you do have 38. So to solve for the degree of freedom, okay, degree of freedom, going back to the table, okay, this one. Oh, yung table. So can you please get the table? Ayan, this one. So let me share with you the table. Table. Yan, so table. Can you see the table, my dear? Kita ba yung table? So, ayan, T distribution na tayo. Yan. Here. Yan, this one. Now, look for 90% and then 38. Ano yung intersecting number ng 90% and then 38? Using the T distribution. 90% and then 38. 90% and then 38. So, what will be the T distribution? 90%. Nasaan ba si 90%? 90% and then 38. Dun tayo sa confidence interval. 90%, 90%, and then 38. Can you please check? Can you please check yung 90%, 38? I'll send it in a group chat. Yung table. I'll send it in a group chat, yung table, yung T-table. So, can you please check it? You saw na? You saw? Because you need this. Yan. Can you please check in our group chat yung 90% and then 38? So what would be the T alpha over 2? Ano yung T alpha over 2? Using that table. Can anyone? T alpha over 2? 38, 90%. Ayun o, confidence interval, 90%, tapos 38. Confidence interval, 90%, and then 38. So what is your T alpha over 2? Use the table. Sinend ko na sa group chat. Can you please check? 90% yung confidence interval, and then 38. So what will be your T alpha over 2? I already sent it in a group chat. So what is your T alpha over 2? Check nyo lang, 90%, 90%, and then 38. 90% and then 38. So your T alpha over 2 is, okay, very good. So that would be 1.686. Okay, 1.686. That is equal to T alpha over 2 multiplied by the square root of S squared P multiplied by 1 over n sub 1 plus 1 over n sub 2. Okay? But the question is, Miss, how do you solve this one? Yung S squared P. Remember the formula? Remember the formula? S squared P is equal to n sub 1 minus 1 S squared sub 1 plus n sub 2 minus 1 S squared sub 2 over n sub 1 plus n sub 2 minus 2. Okay? So that's a formula. So we need to go back. Okay. There you go. Okay? So how do we solve this one? Just substitute. So first, solve for S squared P. Okay? So that will become 20 minus 1. Okay? What is your variance? So since the given is standard deviation, so that will become 1.25 squared plus 20 minus 1 multiplied by 0.90 squared over n sub 1 plus n sub 2 minus 2, 20 plus 20 minus 2, so you do have 38. So what would be your answer? Anybody? What is the answer? Ano naging 38? 20 plus 20 minus 2. Can anyone give me the answer of this one? Ano sagot dito? What would be the answer of this? Can anyone?
Miss 1.90.
Okay, very good. So 1.19. Okay? So you already have 1.19. So we can now solve for margin of error. Okay? So you already have 1.19. So we can now solve for margin of error. So T alpha over 2, that is 1.6. 1.6 what? Ano yung binigay kanina? 1.686 multiplied by the square root of 1.19 multiplied by 1 over 20 plus 1 over 20. So what will be the answer? What will be the answer? What will be your margin of error? We need the margin of error to determine the interval. So what will be your margin of error? What's the margin of error? Answer this one. What will be the answer? What's the answer? What's the answer? Can you please answer that one? Anyone? What's the answer?
Miss 0.58.
Okay, very good. So that is 0.58. Okay, so your margin of error is 0.58. Now, we can now solve for the interval, the confidence interval. Okay, So the confidence interval would be mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 greater than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 minus the margin of error less than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 plus the margin of error. So we have mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 greater than, what is your sample mean? So we have 17.75 minus 18.75, okay, minus 0.58 less than 17.75 minus 18.75 plus 0.58. So mu 1 minus mu sub 2 greater than what? Then less than what? What's the answer? What's the answer? What's the answer, my dear? What's the answer? Anyone? What will be the answer?
Is negative 1.58.
Okay, negative 1.58, and then the other one is?
Negative 0.42.
Okay, negative 0.42. Okay? So therefore, what is your conclusion? What's the conclusion? With the 90%, what? With the 90% confidence, the difference between the true what? True mean cost of renting is between what? Between negative 1.58 and negative 0.42. Okay? So negative 1.58 and negative 0.42. So that will be your conclusion. Okay? With a 90% confidence, the difference between the true mean cost of renting is between negative 1.50, between the difference of 1.58 and the difference of 0.42. Okay? The difference of 1.58 and difference of 0.42. So your confidence interval is mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 is greater than the difference. It's not negative, huh? We call it the difference of 1.58 but less than the difference of 0.42. Negative. The sign here, you're referring to the difference. Okay? Not the negative one. You are referring to the difference. Okay? The difference of 1.58 and then the difference of 0.42. Okay? So that will be letter C. Next example. Student may choose between 3 semester R course in physics without labs and 4 semester R course with laboratory. The final written examination is the same for each section. If 12 students in the section with labs made an average examination grade of 84 with a standard deviation of 4, and then the 18 students in the section without laboratory made an average grade of 77 with a standard deviation of 6, find the 99% confidence scores, assume that the population to be approximately normally distributed with equal variances. Now, in this particular problem is, the standard deviation is given, but the sample size is what? Ano ba yung sample size based on this problem? What have we noticed? Ano yung sample size? What's the sample size? Is it less than 30 or higher than 30? Hello? I'm still there. I'm still there. And what have you noticed? Ano yung sample size? Less than 30 or higher than 30 in this particular problem?
Less than 30.
Okay, less than 30. Can we use t-distribution? Can we use t-distribution?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Precisely, yes. Okay? Even if the standard deviation is given, as long as the sample size is less than 30 and the variances are equally distributed, then we can now use the t-distribution. So take note of that one. Okay, take note of that one. So how do we answer this? Okay, how do we answer this one? So first, you need to come up with a table to summarize everything. Okay, table muna tayo before we compute for the 99%. So please bear with me how to solve that. Okay, so we have students may choose between 3 SEM and then 4 SEM. Okay, so we have 3 SEM, okay, and then we have 4 SEM. Okay, next we have the mean, okay, and then we have standard deviation, and then we have the sample size. Okay, So what is the mean of the semester? The 3 semester. 3 sem, what's the mean? What's the mean of the 3 sem? What's the mean? What's the mean nung 3 sem? What's the mean, my dear people? Ano yung mean? Based on the problem that we have. Ano yung mean? What's the mean daw? Nung 3 sem? Sorry?
84.
80?
84.
84. Students may choose between 3 sems hours in physics without labs and then 4 semester hours with labs. So what is 84? Is it with laboratory or without? Saan yung 84? Ano yung 84?
With laboratory.
Okay, so that would be 4 semester with lab. And then this one is without. Okay. Okay. So we have 84, and then the other one is 77. Next, what about the standard deviation? What's the standard deviation? Without laboratory, the standard deviation is 6. And then with laboratory, the standard deviation is 4. Okay? Next, what about the sample size? The sample size with laboratory is 12. And then the sample size without laboratory is 18. Okay? So without and then with. Okay? Then we need to construct the 99. We need to construct the 99% confidence. Okay? We need to construct the 99% confidence. How do we solve for the 99% confidence? Okay? Since the sample size is less than 30, so we will be using T alpha over 2. So T alpha over 2. Now, how do we determine the T alpha over 2? 99%. Okay, so DF is equal to n sub 1 plus n sub 2 minus 2. Miss, why is it n sub 1 plus n sub 2? Because there are two given samples. Okay? So there are 2 given samples. Kaya dalawa yung kukunin. So what is your DF? What is your DF? DF is 18 plus 12 minus 2. So what is your DF? What is your DF? 18 plus 12 minus 2. What is your DF? 18 plus 12 minus 2. What will be the answer?
28.
Okay, 28. Now, what is your T alpha over 2? 99% T alpha over 2. So, kindly check the table I sent. Please check the table. 99% and then the DF is 28. 99% then DF is 28. So, kindly please check the table. 28 then 99%. So, what is your T alpha over 2 based on the table? 28 and then 99%. What is your T alpha over 2 based on the table that you have?
Plus 2.763.
Okay, so very good. That will be 2.763. So that is your T alpha over 2. 2.763. Now we can solve for the margin of error. Okay. How do we solve for the margin of error? Margin of error is equal to T alpha over 2 multiplied by the square root of S squared T. Okay. Multiplied by 1 minus n sub 1 plus 1 over n sub 1 plus 1 over n sub 2. But the question is, what is your S squared minus P? So you need to compute first, S squared minus P. How do we solve for the S squared minus P? What's the formula? N sub 1 minus 1 multiplied by standard deviation, okay, squared, the first standard deviation, okay, plus n sub 2 minus 1 multiplied by the second standard deviation, squared, and then n sub 1 plus n sub 2 minus 2. Okay? So what is your S squared P? So S squared P is equal to, ano yung first? What's the first sample size that we have? Ano yung first sample size that we have? So we have 18 minus 1 multiplied by 6 squared plus 12 plus 12 minus 1 multiplied by 4 squared over 18 plus 12 minus 2. So what is your S squared P? What's the answer? What's the answer, my dear? What's the answer? What's the answer, my dear? This one, what's the answer? 18 minus 1 multiplied by c squared plus 12 minus 1 multiplied by 4 squared. Divided by 18 plus 12 minus 2. What would be the answer? The answer is what? What's the answer? What's the answer?
Miss, 28.14.
Okay, very good. So 28.14. Now, we can now compute for the margin of error. So we do have 2.763 multiplied by the square root of 28.14 times 1 over 18 plus 1 over 12. So what would be your margin of error? 2.763 multiplied by the square root of 28.14 multiplied by 1 over 18 plus 1 over 12. So what will be your margin of error? What's the answer?
Miss, 5.46.
Okay, 5.46. So your margin of error is 5.46. Now, so given the margin of error, we can now determine the interval. So we have mu sub 1 minus mu sub 2 greater than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 minus the margin of error, but less than sample mean 1 minus sample mean 2 but plus the margin of error. So mu 1 minus mu 2 greater than sample mean. What's the sample mean? So we have 77 minus 84 minus 5.46 but less than 77 minus 84 plus 5.46. So what will be your interval? What's the interval? The interval is what?
0.54 po.
Again, what's the interval?
0.54.
Are you sure? What's the interval?
$1.54 po.
Where? 1.54? Can you please check again? Ito muna. 77 minus 84 minus 5.46. What's the answer? 77 minus 84 minus 5.46. What's the answer? 77 minus 84 minus 5.46. What's the answer?
Miss, negative 12.
How do we read that? How do we read that? It's not negative. How do we read that? The difference is 12.46. So mu 1 minus mu 2 is greater than the difference of 12.46 but less than what? But less than what? But less than, my dear? Difference of 12.46 and then less than by the difference of what?
Difference of 1.54.
Okay, very good. Difference of 1.54. Okay, very good. So mu 1 minus mu 2 is greater than the difference of 12.46 but less than the difference of 1.54. Now, what is your conclusion? What's the conclusion? With the 99% confidence, so what's the conclusion? The difference between what? Between the average grades for the two cores is between what? Between what? The 99% confidence, with the 99% confidence, the difference between the average grades of for the two cores is between what? Is what? is what? Is what, my dear people? Between what? The difference of what? The difference of 12.46 and the difference of 1.54. Okay, the difference of 12.46 and the difference of 1.54. Okay, so negative sign here, this one is not a sign. You are referring to the difference of the two means. Okay, the difference of the two means, or of the two means. Okay, yung ibig sabihin ng negative sign doon. Okay, you're referring to the difference of the two means. Okay, next.